All right, everybody, welcome to episode number 21 with my guest, Kyle Jones. Kyle, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. So, before we get too far into this, why don't we give the listeners a little bit to know about yourself?
Well, I'm a professional bull rider. That's what I do for a living. I have a family. Me, my wife Kelly, and our 2-year-old daughter Kylie May. Uh, Other than that, I'm a full-time student, so I'm going to school full time. So we stay a pretty busy life. Traveling, watching Disney Plus, and doing a lot of reading nowadays.
So, how did you find your way into professional bull riding?
Well, I didn't get into it until I was 17, almost 18. I was a senior in high school. I rode horses. I started riding horses when I was about 13 years old, and I played baseball. Um, and just kind of a bucket list deal. I really just wanted to get on just to try it. I wanted to actually do a saddle bronc, but at the time I couldn't afford a saddle, and there was no place around us to learn. So um, bull riding, you just showed up to a practice pen, you could borrow some equipment, and there's plenty of bull ridings around the house. So it's kind of how it got started.
So, kind of speaking of that a little bit, bring up other sports. How much does other sports kind of help you towards the one sport you want to be in?
It's helped me a lot, I think, specifically because I got a late start. Whereas a lot of guys start off, they riding sheep and steers, and they kind of go up through that process, and so they learn a lot of that feel and stuff. And starting late, when I did, I really was reliant on a lot of the athletics and learning how to develop my training to be able to catch up because, I'm behind the gun quite a bit. A guy starts at 5 years old, and I was almost 18, so there's a lot of years there that you kind of have to make up for. And I think that the sports foundation kind of helped me be able to overcome some of that. Um, yeah.
All right, so I want to move to your career now. So, what was the feeling like when you made your first stop on the Premier Series?
Um, the first stop was, it was interesting. The first one I went to was the Iron Cowboy back in 2017, and I'd been riding for about 4 years, 5 years at that point. And I'd worked really hard to get there. It's a little different than what I imagined. I guess I had this picture in my mind of what it would be like when I got there, and it really just didn't quite live up to that. I guess growing up, you always imagine what it's going to be like, and when you get there, and the reality is, it's just another event. It's not quite as glamorous, if you will. You still have work to do. So it kind of gave me a check a little bit on, okay, what is this, what am I actually wanting to do, and what is it going to actually be like when I get there, which is a huge part of preparing yourself mentally to be able to kind of handle different scenarios and situations.
But at the end of the day, though, when you do get to step into a building like AT&T Stadium like that, what does it feel like walking into that building for the first time, knowing all the history and just knowing it's one of the biggest arenas in the world? Does that start to settle in a little bit after you ride?
Yeah, there was certainly a lot of that as far as just kind of the growing up, being a sports fan. I didn't really know what bull riding was until I was senior in high school. I didn't really understand any of it. So, but I knew football, and so I understood the venue, and that's actually been one of the coolest parts about traveling the country is I've gotten to compete in some of these stadiums that my heroes growing up got to compete in. They still do, on a week to week basis. So that actually was one of the coolest experiences is getting to go to some of those venues like AT&T, the Cavaliers Stadium, those different venues.
So when you do get that call, though, that you're going to go to the Unleash a Beast, what does that feel like knowing that your hard work has paid off to get you to the highest level of the sport you want to do?
Yeah, it's certainly affirming as far as the work you've put in. There's a lot of work you put in. I've dealt with a lot of injuries and had to overcome a lot of that. So to me, it was affirming that the work I have done. hasn't been void, you know.
All right. So now we want to move to something that we kind of like talk about, like seeing your heroes and stuff. Well, being in the same arena as your heroes. Um, in bull riding, who is your biggest inspiration?
Bull riding. Who's my biggest inspiration? You know, I'm not sure. Probably my biggest inspiration is the guys that I've went down the road with. Like I said, I didn't grow up just with that, you know, hero, you know, one specific hero, you know, like I would have in baseball or such. But you know, my heroes have been the guys that I have seen, you know, go grind it out. Guys like Dakota Eagleburger, you know, Mason Lowe, Luke Bradley, you know, those guys are guys that I've traveled down the road with a million miles. Keith Hall. I mean, there's so many of them, and so those are my heroes, really. It's those guys that didn't quit when the, you know, going was hard, and just being able to go to war
So
with them.
then,
I mean, technically,
so then, sports in general. Who is one person that's an inspiration to you?
probably my biggest inspiration. It's probably two guys. Albert Pujols and Tim Tebow. Albert Pujols probably longer, and then Tim Tebow, you know, more recently. You know, obviously he's quite a bit younger than Pujols is, but those are probably my two heroes. The way they're able to use their platform they've been given to honor God. That's something that's not easy. You know, and the more money you make, it doesn't make it any easier to do that. So those are two people that I have watched, and the way they just go through life, and utilize their purpose and utilize their platform, is something that I respect, I look up to, and something that I'll continue to, you know, really look up to the rest of my life.
So speaking of that, when so many other guys out of the sport, or maybe in the sport, but not really, they start to focus on themselves and fade away from the fans. When you're part of a sport that doesn't do that, and you have those guys in other sports that want to do stuff with the fans, was it like seeing that from other guys, and was it like being in an organization that does
I think
that?
it's awesome. I love how the PBR, has that set up. It's unfortunate that COVID has kind of prevented a lot of that, you know, from happening, as far as, you know, the athletes being able to interact with the fans. Um, I love it. And, you know, I started off as a fan. So when I first started, you know, I went over to my cousin's house and we watched PBR, you know, back in 2012, and we would watch it, you know, at her house every weekend. And so that's kind of how I got started, was just watching it, you know. And so I started as a fan myself. I have bunches of stuff autographed by all of these guys, you know, that I grew up looking up to. You know, went to a JB Mooney, Chris Shiver school, you know, back when I first started. So, you know, I really hold that, you know, close to my heart, that, hey, I'm a fan of this sport, and the PBR offers us and gives us every opportunity to really interact with our fans, which I love it. I think that's really important.
So just real quick though, when you did make your Unleash the Beast debut, you said the venue and the environment itself didn't starstruck you, but what about with going around the guys that if you look that you're a fan of for your whole life?
Um, you know, I don't know that starstruck would have been the right word, because we still competed with some of those guys, you know, from time to time. But it really does say a lot when you get to step into the locker room with that many of the best bull riders to ever live. I mean, especially guys like JB, who, like I said, when I first started riding, I was going to his school before I'd been on 100 bulls yet. So that was, you know, kind of a big eye opener. Like, hey, man, you know, you put in a lot of work, and now you get to ride with some of those guys that, you know, you really looked up to, and they really, you know, paved the way for me to be able to be there. So
All right, so kind of still speaking of this a little bit, how great is it being a part of a sport where even though in the standings it's you against a rider, But at the end of the day, it's you against the bull, and all your work doesn't affect the other guy, and the other guy doesn't affect your work. How great is it being part of the sport where it's not really you against somebody
I
else?
love it. That's actually one of the reasons why I chose to pursue bull riding over baseball. At that time, when I first started riding, I had a decision to make, as far as whether I wanted to go on to play college ball or to ride bulls, and that was the biggest thing. Like bull riding, you're not so reliant on other pieces to do their part. It's about you, and every time you get on, you get all the pressure that you're going to get in any other sport, but you're not relying on other people to have to help you get there. It's all on you. So
So I was talking about this in a past podcast I had done, and it was that Corn McCoy had brought up that that's one thing that's neat about this sport is that it's not you against the bull, and then also the bull wins, the rider wins, and the stock contractors win. Is that kind of something that's also still awesome about this sport that everybody involved wins?
yeah, it is pretty cool, especially nowadays that they have these bull competitions and stuff where I mean, it's kind of motivating. There's a chance that everybody there is gonna get a good show. The crowd, the stock contractors, the guys. I mean, anymore, it's even to that point. There's still a few out there, but a lot of the stock contractors nowadays, with the format that they have set up, they're rooting for you. So I think that's cool. I think that's probably the best way to have it. So
So, kind of speaking of that, also, was it like going to a bull team challenge where, like 99% of the time, the bull you draw is guaranteed to take you to the pay window and maybe even push 90? What is that like?
um, it's good. It's kind of it's good, and then at the same time there's some downsides to it because you get to the championship round of the UTB, and those bulls aren't just good bulls as far as to get on rider friendly, if you would call it. Where those bull teams, a lot of these bulls are rider friendly bulls. So I think it makes that jump a little bit more from those uh, velocity events to the UTB. But at the same time, some of those bull teams events, you are going to get on something that you're going to be pushing 90 on, and that's what you really want. So consistency wise, I like the UTBs probably more on that side. I feel like it's more competitiveness. You're kind of stepping into the fire a little bit more than what you are at the velocity events, and so kind of I think that's probably my favorite part about the UTB. Outside of the glamour and stuff, that don't really matter. But just knowing that you go to the UTB and it's going to be a fist fight because you're not going to get on something the majority of the time that's just going to, be rider friendly, if you would choose that term.
So I'm just kind of curious, when you're on the back of a bull, how long does the 8 seconds really feel to you?
It depends. It really depends on the bull. Some bulls it feels like forever, and then some bulls, it doesn't feel as long. I would say probably the better bulls, uh, when you do stay on, it feels quicker, but at the same time, I mean they're harder to ride, so then you fall off, it feels quicker too. um, some of the bulls, I guess, that are lower level, they're slower, and so it just feels like a long time. And part of that's where your mind's at on a ranker bull. You're reacting so much that your mind's not quite as engaged. Sometimes it will engage a little bit later into a ride, whereas on a weaker bull, you could sink the entire time you're on them.
So, just curious about your opinion of how much the bull business has grown. When it has grown from being like you could score like 85, like say in the first round of the World Finals, to then almost anything like classic wise can get you to the pay window. What does that say about how much the bull business has grown? That these younger bulls that aren't as mature as like say Smooth Operator are able to take you to that pay window.
Man, the bull industry has exploded. That's one thing I've realized even back since I first started riding, because I didn't come to it, growing up in tradition, right? And I feel like if you do that, you can kind of hold a little bias. But just coming from, starting late like that, and being able to see the difference when I look back at videos from in the '90s compared to now, just the consistency of ranked bulls. I mean, it's fed all the way down into your local amateur deals where there's times you're getting on something that's, could easily be at the UTB. So just the consistency of ranked bulls is just out of this world nowadays. The breeding programs definitely hit a whole new gear as far as that's concerned.
All right, so I want to move back to kind of like the part of the sport where everybody wins and it's not you against the riders. How great is it also having good travel partners in a sport like this?
It's everything. We hit such a high on the weekends when we're riding adrenaline. And so they have what's called the blue syndrome. And so you have adrenaline letdowns, and that happens a lot afterwards. And man, having the right traveling partners keeps you consistent and holds you accountable to how you handle those letdowns. Even if you win, there's still letdowns of natural, adrenaline that you're losing. Having the good traveling partners that are going to keep you honest with making sure that you're staying to the process and not out doing stuff that you don't need to. That's big. For me, a lot of it is living a life that's a reflection of my identity in Christ and being a kingdom person, and um, having people around me that are going to hold me accountable to that is big. Because we all face temptations in life, and if we're surrounded by the right people who are holding us accountable to the right things, we can struggle the right way through those temptations instead of falling. And you know, it happens in bull riding. It happens in life. Just in general, having people around you that are going to hold you accountable is a big thing.
So, just curious, so many people say that the adrenaline you get from riding bulls feels like a drug. How much does that adrenaline feel like that to you?
I don't, I don't know about feeling like a drug. Most of the drugs I have from surgery kind of make me want to go to sleep. So, um, yeah, adrenaline's an interesting thing. I mean, it certainly it'll make you not feel things. You get hurt, you may broke my collarbone. I didn't even realize it until I was to the shoot that something was wrong with my shoulder. So, I mean, that's definitely a thing. But I don't know about a drug. I'm certainly not addicted to it.
All right. So I want to move to this year with the first Velocity Tour event that you went to in Cedar Park, Texas. How great of a feeling is it that you go to the first event where probably some people will be rusty and you win, well, you get second, and it's good enough to get you to Arcadia?
Yeah, that was actually really good, especially coming off the first round where I had fallen off. So finishing it strong. Um, yeah, it was just to me it was I expected it because of all the training I had put in. Physically, mentally, I was in a right place. Spiritually, right place with my family, right place was just about everything. And so, being able to go into that and seeing that, uh, the results from that payoff is affirming. So
And then how great of a feeling was it to make the first ride of round one at the UTB event in Arcadia?
it was fun. Yeah, it was fun. I was in that place, the results didn't really matter. I was having fun riding bulls. And, I unfortunately didn't end the way that I wanted it to. We'll start back up here in a couple more weeks, but yeah, just having a lot of fun. When you're in the right place, you're doing the right things. Bull riding's fun and it's competitive, and just being there. And I looked up before I didn't. They changed the name of the bull, so I didn't know what bull I had. And then I found out that it was the bull Ryan Dirt Eater went 91 on at the finals, and I was stoked about it. So there was some competition there, and I'm competitive, so I was pretty pumped about it.
So far through the 2021 season, how great is it seeing that the PBR has been able to find ways to keep everybody in work during such a still challenging time?
Man, it's great because I mean they very easily could not do that. So that's been refreshing, and man, I can only imagine what they've had to do these past couple weeks with not only the pandemic that's still affecting people, but and businesses, but the snowstorm and everything that just rolled through. So I imagine it's chaos, and really thankful for the small people within the organization that are putting in a lot of work to make sure that we can get a ride.
All right, so I'm gonna move back to the Arcadia event that you're at. So the second day you brought up you didn't finish the way you wanted to because you broke your collarbone. How much of a mental game is this sport, knowing that you could go from a high like you did in round one to then being back at the bottom with the broken collarbone? How much mentally of a sport is it that you had to bounce back from that?
It's pretty big, and I've faced it. It's not been normal. I've had 6 surgeries in the 9 years I've been riding bulls. It's, I mean, it's part of it. Uh, it's something that I'm used to though, so it's a big mental thing. But you kind of get used to what that feels like, and I think you become a better athlete when you're able to actually recover and come back strong. And I feel like I'm at that point in my career where something like this really is not affecting me too much. The time off, I'm able to utilize it to look back, see what I need to improve on. There's certainly things on them rank bulls you have to do better at, and so kind of learning from that, putting it to work, and then coming back, knowing I'm going to be better when I come back than I did, in Arcadia. So.
So, just curious, what kind of injuries have you had to battle through in this sport?
Man, so I've broken my left foot, tore my ACL and MCL in my left knee, tore my meniscus in my right knee, broke my left wrist, had surgery on it, dislocated my left elbow, tore all the ligaments on the inside and outside, had surgery on it, had 2 shoulder reconstructions, broke my clavicle, broke my jaw, had surgery on it, broke my right shoulder, had surgery on it. I broke my fibula in my right leg. So that's about all of them. Other than concussions, I've had plenty of concussions too.
So, is that one thing that makes the sport so challenging that no matter what injuries you get, you don't get paid through those injuries? You still have to show up just to get paid?
Yeah, yeah. It's a performance-based sport, and you know that's a big deal. And that goes into what I was talking about earlier with the adrenaline letdown too. Man, it's all of it. All of it compacts mentally and physically. You trying to push your body at certain times when maybe you shouldn't. Because it's a performance-based sport. We're not under a salary. We're not guaranteed any money. So it's important that everything we're doing is intentional and that we're doing the right thing, because you're not getting paid otherwise. And I mean, for those that make a living doing it, you know, that's a big thing. Outside of being in the very top, there's kind of a middle ground when you're at the velocities, and so it adds to the pressure. It adds to a lot of it. So
So, kind of speaking of like not guaranteeing getting paid, like other sports, you also aren't guaranteed, but you're in other sports, you're guaranteed to live another day. How much does that thought of you're not even guaranteed to live another day in the sport of bull riding also take another mental factor into it?
it's definitely there. And yeah, it's there and it's real. It's something that you overcome though. For me, my faith is a really big part. That question, the whole question, I think applies to many different people in different walks of life. But I know that physical death is only one thing, and that eternally I'm secure, and I get to experience God right now in His kingdom right now, and I'll get to experience in the fullest sense when that day comes. So it really, I say that there's also a point of making sure that I'm doing everything in my power to love God with all my heart, all my mind, all my soul. And when I do that, and when I'm doing the right things, then that whole question kind of isn't quite as heavy, maybe, as what it would be.
So, kind of speaking of that, and then also back with this pandemic topic a little bit, you think that's one thing that people should realize, like keep themselves up spiritually, and then also have fun while you're doing everything, because you never know when either physically could be taken away, like the not guaranteed living, or like in a pandemic when things can just be taken away.
Yeah, I think that when we're honoring God with our life, and when He's truly the Lord of our lives, we find enjoyment in things, and we don't worry so much. You know, uh, I don't have fear of those things like I would otherwise. And instead, I find enjoyment and satisfaction in some of the little things that maybe I wouldn't have even thought about before. This time off, I've been able to spend time with my daughter and my family. My little family's loved it, and we've got to spend, it's been 4 weeks now, every weekend we've got to spend together. And so that's a blessing. Like, I'm not disappointed at all. And I think that if we all do that, and we focus on God, and we just are relying on Him to provide for us, and not only financially, but provide for fulfillment in life, help us to see the little things and find enjoyment through our struggles, um, then I think we'll be okay.
All right, so I want to move to a topic of 2020. So with it being the year that it was, through all the challenges, how different was it competing at Guthrie, Oklahoma for the Las Vegas Invitational with no fans?
Man, it was different. I'll tell you that. Like, especially, I remember, I don't know which day it was, um, uh, but was it Linda Marlino? Maybe he got on Fearless, and it was before. I don't know if they had like they had a whole section that wasn't televised, right? So you didn't have the music or anything like that. It literally was just dead quiet. And here Linda got on Fearless, and they marked him like a 45.5 or something. And it was just like the craziest thing you'd ever saw. It was like you're just at a practice pen and getting on one of the rankest bulls, probably to ever live. As far as having trips like that, that was pretty eye-opening. Like, dang, because generally you get all that music and the crowd, and it really does pump you up, and you hit a whole different kind of level of focus. And with all of that, it was interesting. You had to change the way you approached that situation, because you didn't have some of that motivator that you would have otherwise. I would say the fans maybe wasn't as big of a deal as like the music and stuff. So when the event was actually going on, you had your buddies there, and they also had all the music going like it was a regular event. And I think that helps too. What's different is when you don't have that, when it's just quiet, like you're at a practice pen, and you're getting on as rank as bulls as Fearless and some of them bulls. Yeah, it was different.
So is it also different when you walk in, not just without music, but nothing else is really going on besides almost like practice pen, just seeing the whole arena set up like a PBR?
Yeah, it was the whole thing was really weird. It was really weird, especially Guthrie. Vegas was a little different and kind of how it was set up, and so it was kind of a smaller. Everything was jam packed. So even on the sides and stuff, you had a bunch of riders standing up on the platforms, whereas Guthrie was more wide open, and it was earlier on. So I think everything was more restricted and all of that. So.
So that's going to be another one of my questions, which was the Monster Energy Team Challenge in Vegas. How weird was that? And then also, how kind of cool was that arena set up? Kind of like with all those screens around you, just music playing, you're hearing guys on the back of the chutes, and then also, what was it like being in a bubble in the South Point?
Um, yeah, that was a different too. The arena was one of the coolest setups I've ever been to. They did a great job with that. Um, Being in a bubble in the South Point was really weird. Um, yeah, it was really weird, especially on the weekend. So during the week, you weren't in a bubble. You could do whatever you want. But like on the weekend, like you had one area where we played ping pong and basketball, played on the guitar, and we just hung out. But outside of that, all you could do is go to your room. So that was different. I mean, it was fun, hanging out with the guys. But yeah, that was definitely a different scenario.
So was it kind of great though with Guthrie and to be able to travel by RV a little bit?
Well, I didn't travel by RV because Guthrie is only 4 hours from my house. But staying in the RV, yeah, that was actually pretty cool too. Everybody, staying in the RV, but we could go out and hang out outside, in the parking lot and stuff. That was pretty cool. That was a cool experience.
All right, so then with all this, like the bubble and all that, was it like, or did you ever realize in that moment that you're a part of sports history with the return of sports, with the shut after the shutdown, and then also providing a way for other sports to return? Did you ever realize you're part of sports history like that?
I guess I never really thought about it a whole lot. I was just grateful to be able to ride at that point. Wasn't, I mean, a lot of sports got shut down. So to be able to have the opportunity to compete still, especially at that level. But honestly, when it first happened, I mean, there wasn't anything going on locally. I mean, PBR was pretty much it. I don't know what the PRCA was doing, but I know around, Missouri, there wasn't anything to go to at the beginning of the, pandemic. So just to be able to ride was just a blessing, and then be able to ride at Guthrie that close to the house was pretty cool. Full
So,
stoked.
so kind of speaking of that, traveling to Guthrie, when you had traveled to Guthrie, yeah, um, how much of like ghost towns did it feel like going to there compared to probably how it would normally?
Uh, as far as the actual city, then yeah, a lot. Especially the way I went. I don't even think I went through the town. I kind of went through a back way, a lot of back roads, but a lot different than going to a regular venue in the middle of a big city. That was a lot different. But I mean, I'm used to it. In the summertime, we're not going to those big venues anyway. It's mostly just in the spring and fall. So uh, I'm pretty used to it. But it kind of did take you back to the roots a little bit. Not going to a big indoor stadium. I think the last time I rode there was a buck and stock sale. So
Was it weird going through Vegas though for the Monster Energy Team Challenge during the shutdown?
yeah, that was the first time I'd actually ever been to Vegas. So yeah, it was different. It's crazy because Vegas is like it was just like it's tiny. Like I've went, I guess, around Vegas a bunch traveling, but I never actually went into it. So it's really not that big. Everything's just packed together. But I didn't really go around town. So, I pretty much was in the hotel. South Point was pretty much everywhere I went. You know,
So just kind of curious, which one would you rather prefer, the bubble in the South Point or the bubble at Guthrie?
oh, the bubble at Guthrie probably. Yeah, yeah, probably the bubble at Guthrie. First of all, it was really hot outside. Um, like it was really hot outside when we went for the team challenge. But I think I'd prefer staying in a trailer and being able to hang out outside. You know,
All right, so still speaking of this, how thankful are you to be part of of an organization that cares about the athletes and cares about its staff so much to come back so quickly and think of plans so quickly to do it in a safe way?
yeah, I'm very grateful. I financially it was a blessing for my family. We needed it at that time, and um, it was unexpected. I mean, we after Bangor, we didn't see it coming. It was literally like all of a sudden everything got shut down. So just to have that opportunity was really a blessing, and it continues to be. What they're doing now. Like I said, I mean, they're doing everything. they can to put these events on. So I I all thanks to everyone who works for them. Everybody I'm sure is running with their heads cut off, trying to put everything together. So
So, how weird though did it feel like with the velocity starting so great to start 2020 with attendance records being broke, these big cities, like just everything's on a roll, and then after Bangor, Duluth hits, and there's nobody at Unleash the Beast. When did it start to settle in that this coronavirus was more serious than it actually people thought it was going to be?
well, I mean, I think for me it lasted longer, I guess. As far as places shutting down. Even now, I'm surprised that as many places are shut down as there are. At the beginning, who would have thought that a year from now, like the schedule this year is completely changed. It's nowhere near what it generally would be, um, which is cool, but it sucks at the same time because there's a lot of cool events. But yeah, so it lasted a lot longer than I think anybody thought. I've stopped guessing on when everything's gonna start really getting back to normal as far as that's concerned.
So, just kind of curious, with you being involved in professional sports, when notifications start coming through, like players in the Utah Jazz get COVID, and the NBA shuts down that night, and then the MLB and the NHL all decide to shut down the day after. When those notifications come through, with you being involved in professional sports, what goes through your mind in that moment?
To be honest, I knew that the PBR was going to do everything in their power to put events on. So some of those organizations, I wasn't quite shocked, that they shut down. But for the PBR, I guess I wasn't as concerned. I thought that they were going to do everything in their power to make sure that they were putting on events, and they did the best that they very could. And I thought that they did a good job with that, considering all the other sports. They did a pretty dang good job. So
All right, so I want to move back to the Monster Energy Team Challenge. With that being the event that Jose's team won, was it like seeing a guy like Jose with his work ethic that he has put in to be so great in this short amount of time that he's been in the sport?
oh man, Jose's a freak. I do have to say I beat Jose in ping pong when we were at Vegas. So if he watches this, I'm coming after you. I'll let you have a rematch. No, yeah, it was fun. I mean, Jose's a competitor. That whole experience, just being around all of those guys. You know, we were competing. We weren't just competing at the bull riding. It wasn't just in the arena playing basketball, playing ping pong. Um, there was a lot of competition going on. So that was actually really cool to get to play with some of them Brazilians, because I don't play soccer, so I could never do that. But I can play ping pong a little bit, and Brazilians were playing ping pong and getting to hang out with them and compete. We may not speak the same language, but we're all competitive, and so we speak that language. So getting to hang out with those guys was pretty cool too.
Is that one cool thing that is so great about the PBR also is that like so many guys around the world are able to come together and just get along so quickly.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. It's really cool. Getting to compete against those guys and just thrive off it. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So how kind of cool is it, do you think, back in 2017 when the PBR introduced the Global Cup?
Yeah, that's definitely that was that was pretty cool. And I liked it when they would go to different countries. So I mean, I guess considering right now them just being able to have it's pretty cool. But I like the concept of having all those different countries represented, and some of those countries that people don't get to see as much too. I think that may be the best part. Uh, Over here in the states, it's not like you get to see a bunch of Mexican riders and even Canadians. Although there's still a few, but just being able to actually be introduced to the fact that bull riding isn't just North America. I mean, we even went the Global Cup. That covers what, 5 countries? Five.
Yeah, 5 countries, 6 teams.
Yeah, and bull riding. What is it? New Zealand. Oh, I forget his name. And he just
Uh,
came over from New Zealand. Is that right?
what year are you thinking of?
This year.
I,
He
I
was
don't
like
think I don't think anybody from New Zealand, but I know that one guy from Guatemala.
Guatemala. That's what it is, not New Zealand. Okay, so I love seeing that, and seeing the fact that bull riding has went all the way across the country. I mean, we went and rode in Saudi Arabia. It wasn't for PBR, but we did that a couple years ago, and just being able to see that bull riding has actually stretched this globe is pretty cool.
Is it also cool seeing how it's able to get so much popularity now in big markets like Los Angeles, New York, just all these big markets that it's not familiar with to other people?
I think it's awesome. Growing up, again, I wasn't, I didn't just grow up in a Western lifestyle, if you would have it, but I did grow up a fan of sports, and being able to see the PBR really be able to hit some of those mainstream cities and stuff is pretty cool. Um, Certainly, I think more fans are introduced, and to me, that's the coolest part. Is more people get to actually see the sport of bull riding.
All right, so I want to move back to the Monster Energy Team Challenge topic and about Jose. You got to ride at Salt Lake City, and that was the event that Jose rode Chiseled on. Was it like seeing a ride like that in that moment?
I missed it.
Oh,
I missed it. I actually I was dealing with a back injury, and so as soon as I got off, I went into the sports med. But I did hear about it, and then I watched a replay of it. Um, I will say though, I've seen a few of those. I watched JB go 94.5 on Bruiser, and Sioux Falls maybe, but in 2017, those big rides like that. Anytime you see a bull ride where you're getting up into 93, 94, you hang on to those memories, because it just does not happen very often, especially at that level. I mean, it's one thing going 94, maybe at a smaller deal where a lot of it's hype, but you go to that level and they're 94 on it, and most of the time it's legit some rank bull rides. So yeah, but I
so
missed it. Mm.
so then also with these big moments, the whatever that CBS broadcast was after round number one of Arcadia, Ezekiel Mitchell had that big ride on Smooth Operator. Was it like seeing that ride also?
I missed it too. What, you're gonna pick one out? I actually missed that one too. I wasn't quite in there. So, but for Zeke's sake, man, I loved it. And I remember him coming back there and saying like, man, I wish he would have counted for some points. But man, the fact that the rode Smooth Operator for what, 93 and something, 90,
Yeah, I think it was 93 and three quarters.
3/4. I mean, rank. Zeke will never forget that moment. I believe that was the highest he's ever been marked to. I'm ecstatic for him. I mean, he's went really hard to be able to accomplish that, and anytime you can see a guy that's put in that much work and struggled as much as anybody that's going to get to that level has, to be successful on that stage, in that manner, hats off to him. That's awesome.
All right, so I'm gonna back to what talking about Jose with him winning that Monster Energy Team Challenge and then having so many event wins already. Was there any point in time early in the season when you thought that Jose was going to be the world champion that year, and there's just no stopping him last year?
Uh, Pretty early on. I mean, he was all year pretty much was dominant. I mean, I don't think there was too many people that didn't. Um, I think he set the pace at the beginning of the year, and he had that gas pedal smashed the entire year. So I don't know the exact event, but I would say it would have been really early on in the first half when you could tell that Jose was probably going to run away with it.
So, do you think that kind of started when after Jess tore his hamstring, as unfortunate that as it is, with Jose being the clear front runner? You think that's kind of when people probably would think that there's just no stopping Jose?
Yeah, probably. And you know what? I was really happy for Joao that he was able to. I mean, technically, Jose didn't run away with it. Joao was right there the entire season, and so I thought that Jose was going to run away with it. It really ended up being closer than what probably most people thought, and that's because Joao is so freaking good. It's unfortunate he didn't go to the World Finals, but at 34, for him to be able to do what he's doing, man, I think that that said a lot. So probably just getting hurt, said a lot about Jose winning the world title, but certainly Joao didn't let that, become solidified until he ended up getting COVID at Velocity Finals.
So what do you think that says about Joao being as old as he is, being able to still perform at the highest level, and then also he's still getting better away from his hand compared to when he first showed up? What do you think that says about a guy that old?
Man, I love it. He was 27 when he was a rookie, and he's 34 now. And what he's done, man, I'm all about it. Everybody says this is a young man's sport, but Joe Al's kind of turned that on his head a little bit, and I think he's going to compete for a world title every year that he decides he's going to ride. I mean, he's that good.
So then, speaking also that I know one of your competitors so much on the velocity tour has been Ben Johns. Was it like seeing a guy like that too? Just an absolute freak of nature, being able to do this at his old age, at that old age.
That's crazy. It is him and Wallace and Ed Nye coming back this past weekend. I thought Ed Nye was probably done, and he's done. He's gonna try to make world finals again. Man, hats off to him. I mean, it really shows what they've done physically. The fact that they're even physically able to do that at that age, and knowing what the recovery is like being a bull rider. For me at 27, I can only imagine what the recovery is like for a guy that's 45 years old. So yeah, that's much respect for those guys, because I know that the time spent just recovering from the sport is tremendous. Probably a lot more than what most of us younger guys are going through.
So speaking of age and guys being able to still compete at the highest level of being in in their 40s, what do you think? Also going to the football side of things about Tom Brady, what do you think it says about that about him?
Yeah, it says that he knows how to recover the right way, and he knows a little bit about performance. It's interesting, and I watched Chris Gronkowski talking about it the other day. Like, when it comes to sports, what do you? It really comes down to, what do you need to be the best athlete? And like Chris was saying, a lot of guys think that football players just are getting big and strong and taking all these supplements, and he said it's not really true. Um, it's about becoming the best athlete, and that doesn't always mean getting stronger. Well, Tom and his TB12, and he does the pliability and stuff. I think that has been the source of his longevity, and he would probably, I know he would say the same thing. He says it all the time. So I think it says a lot about guys who understand where they need to be physically, and how can they maintain that. And getting away from some of that testosterone that says I need to go, 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 and then your body ends up it takes a toll on your body over the years. So learning to train the right way, I think. Yeah, and Joao, I'm sure those older guys. I mean, you have to learn to train the right way if you want to compete at that age.
All right, so speaking of training, I want to talk about your work ethic a little bit and you posting it on social media. How what how much work do you put in every day like that you do?
Um, I'm putting it about. It depends. At least a couple hours a day, 2 to 4 hours. I used to spend a lot of time training. Um, when I was probably 22, I was spending um, 8 hours a day. A lot, and so over the years, I've kind of grown that. First and foremost, I want to spend more time in my relationship with God than I am bull riding. I want to make sure that I'm more in tune with my purpose than I am my platform. And so I spend so much more time studying scripture, trying to become a better communicator of my faith, and how to live a better kingdom life according to scripture. And then in after that to my family. So what am I doing with my family, and how can I incorporate some of that lifestyle of being healthy with my family? And me and my daughter were always doing something physical. She works out with me and stuff. So incorporating that, and then because I'm spending less time training, I'm very focused on what I'm doing. I'm trying to recreate something that's real and that's a feel thing. You get on them rank bulls, there's a certain feel, and then I can take that feel and say, okay, how can I incorporate that feel into my training? If I need to do this, then how can I make that happen? Bands, balance, and then stretching. I don't really count that in, but I do that quite a bit throughout the day. Diet, that kind of stuff to make sure I'm agile and I'm able to bounce back after getting hurt.
So, kind of speaking of family, is it ever difficult for you to step away from your family to go on tour on the weekends?
Uh, at times, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's never just fun to be away from your family, even for a short amount of time. Um, but it's something that you get used to, and it's something that I make sure that when I'm home I'm fully engaged, and that's really important, is to be fully engaged with my family. So time management throughout the week allows for me to be fully engaged when I'm at home with my family, and then when I go on the road I'm able to be fully engaged with my platform and my career, because I know that that's one way in which I provide for my family. So it's important, and it kind of meshes together. Luckily for us today, we have Zoom, and we have Skype, and we have FaceTime, and so there's a lot of ways in which I can still communicate with my family and see my daughter, and she can see me while I'm on the road.
So, with so many challenges involved in this sport and the grind that it takes to get to the point where you're at the highest level, how much do you appreciate it once it has brought you to this point?
A lot. I mean, I'm just blessed to be able to do this at this level. I mean, when I was a kid, I always wanted to be a professional athlete, and actually being able to do that, some people, are blessed in other ways, and this is one way in which God has allowed me the choice to pursue this dream, and I'm very thankful for it. It's not something I take for granted. I don't know how many years specifically I'm going to ride bulls. So every time I do get to, I'm really grateful for it.
All right. So much in this podcast, you brought up how much your faith kind of keeps you in track and then keeps you where you want to be at. How much does your faith help you through anything that life brings you?
It's everything. I mean, uh, my purpose in this life is not to be a bull rider, and according to Scripture, I don't know that anybody could say that that's our purpose. I think we have platforms, and God allows us to have choices. Um, but knowing that my identity is tied to my purpose of being an image bearer, and being able to have a relationship with God and to bring order and flourishment, by loving people, by honoring God with my money, by honoring God with my relationships, with my time. Um, I think that gives me meaning in life. That's outside of my performance, which we're in a performance-based sport. So being able to do that helps me navigate through everything. It's my worldview. It's the lens in which I see reality, and um, so yeah, it really is everything. It makes me grateful for my platform too.
All right. So, for anybody listening to this that wants to pursue a dream of professional sports, what would you tell them to achieve their dreams?
Well, I would say know what success is. And true success is understanding the will of God and being able to act upon it. So I'd say that's the first thing that you need to do in life. And then you need to understand the difference between your purpose and your platform. This is going to help you navigate through failure, because when those two are one thing, then every time we fail, it hurts our identity because our identity is tied to it. But if our purpose transcends our platform, then we can struggle through things with careers without it actually impacting our identity, which is tied to our purpose. So understand that your platform that God has allowed you to do, that if you fail, it's okay. Like you've been blessed to be able to do it. Keep doing it. Honor God with your time and commitment, to perfecting your trade as much as you can, honor God with that, and it won't affect your purpose in life. And then lastly, love your neighbor. Utilize your relationships with people and where your platforms allow you to have relationships with people. In bull riding, every single move, it matters. I mean, every single move matters, but in life, every person matters. And if you understand that, then I think you'll be successful in life and you'll enjoy your platform and everything will be okay.
All right. And then the last question I got for you. What impact do you hope people feel from this from you? And what impact do you hope to leave on people throughout your career?
I hope that people see a man who honored honored God with his trade, that he worked really hard. He honored God with his work ethic. He honored God with his time, and that everything he did was God honoring. That he was a good kingdom person first and foremost. You know, I'm a competitor. I was, born competitive. Honor God with my competitiveness. Don't let that be something that I boast about, but something that I really enjoy in the purest sense. It's not so much about goals. Uh, it's more about enjoying being able to compete at the highest level and really step into that fire and feel it and enjoy that moment. That's something that I hope people see, that I enjoyed those moments because, you know, I I love riding bulls, and I've been given that opportunity, so I want to honor God with that.
All right. All right. Thank you, Kyle, for joining me this afternoon. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, no problem. Nice talking to you.
Yeah, nice talking to you. Hope to see you back on tour very soon.
Yes, sir. Glendale.
All right. See you there.